car, won 7 out of 9 Grand Prix within 63, so it's a piece of history. It's a great pleasure to drive for classic team Lotus, and Bob Dance, who is Jim Clark's mechanic, is the mechanic on the car, so we have a lot of inbuilt history back from Lotus. I love the car, it fits me like an old pair of slippers, so I just love getting in it and getting on with it. To drive a 25 is the pinnacle in my eyes, really. The event is unbelievable. You know, every year it seems to get bigger and better, and you see, you know, the mechanics, you see the drivers and the cars. It should pass on. You know, we're all getting older, and then younger people should come in. You've got mechanical changes and feel with brakes, no ABS, no traction control, no power steering. So, you know, it's down to the nitty-gritty of hanging on and giving it what you can.
Down to Laventon, Andy Middlehurst has the inside line, a perfectly executed manoeuvre. Andy Middlehurst takes the lead.
But here, you know, you hear them run, you see them race, you know, you see the drivers driving them to the best of their ability, and it keeps, you know, the mechanicals moving. You know, these cars do not like to be sat still. I've run it 5 times, and the most memorable one was where I actually had an engine not so good that weekend, and I dropped back to 4th position thinking that was it. I pushed up and there was a safety car with about 3 laps to go, so I bunched us back up again. And then I overtook James King 2 laps to go and won that one. That was really hard work. You know, I was really down on horsepower that weekend, so you never know what's going to happen. You know, sometimes you manage an overheating problem or a gear shift problem, so you've got to try and get some clear air out, get every out your slipstream from the rear and push on. And you know, I just push every lap as a qualifying lap, really. 17 of them. You know, you just got to push hard.
The glorious Lotus 25 has won the Glover Trophy at Goodwood amazingly 5 times, and always in the hands of Andy Middlehurst, who's done a wonderful job with the car. And of course, it's the 1963 World Championship winning car at Jim Clark's, so another piece of fabulous racing history, returning to Goodwood again and again and taking part in one of our most important races, the Glover Trophy.
This is definitely one of my favourite ever historic race cars that I've had the great honour and privilege of being invited to drive. This is a 1960 246S Dino, and they only made 3 like this. This one's very particular because it has that sort of long sloping rear deck and the flip up sort of ducktail shape, which gives it a very sort of famous, noticeable silhouette. I've not totted up the number of victories, but it's been here in the hands of some great drivers in the past, and it's always been prepared by Tim Samway's Sporting and Historic Car Equipe, so they know what they're doing and they really understand the car. And then I think it's just a question of, you know, can we piece it all together on race day? We did manage to do that last year. I was very chuffed to win the Sussex Trophy 2017. Well, the thing with the Dino compared to sort of the Listers, you know, it's massively down on power compared to those. So where it has its advantage, it's a very lightweight car and it handles very well. The way it's set up means that unless you really attack the entry to the corners, it's going to plough through with understeer. So what you actually need to do is adopt a sort of rally-style driving approach and flick it sideways on the way in, get it sideways, hard on the power and try and drift it through the A-pace.
Beautiful flow out of the corner, up over the rise into Laventon. Sam Hancock in the number 4 Ferrari.
The feeling from the car was fine for the wet conditions. My problem was that I couldn't see anything because this Perspex windscreen has a weird sloping top and it stops right at your eye level. And the 2 inches below it curves, so the view is warped through the curve of the Perspex. So you have a choice. You either sort of dip your head down and look through the glass, or you sit up and look over the top of it. So I had to loosen my belt, sit up high, open my visor a little bit, and look over the top of the screen. I spent the whole race sort of driving like this. I was up against a great mate of mine, Ollie Bryan, who's a fantastic driver, very, very quick in the wet as well. And he was in his little Lotus, which is especially quick in the rain, but they don't have the power that this has. So I was trying to just stay close enough that if I did get a bit of a toe or a bit of a slingshot on him, I could maybe pass on the straight, and that's what we managed to do. I got a nice run out of Lavin, had a good run on Ollie as we went down the straight, and I managed to sort of pull alongside. And I mean, Lotus versus Ferrari power in that situation, that he didn't have much defence, and my job then was just not to make a mistake. And luckily, the checker flag wasn't too far away, and managed to seal the win.
The 246S Dino Ferrari is the most prolific winner at Goodwood, winning 8 races, amazing, in the hands of all sorts of different drivers and winning the coveted Stirling Moss Trophy. This absolutely glorious car came second originally in the Targa Florio with Wolfgang von Trips and Phil Hill. So a really wonderful, proper bit of racing history, winning at Goodwood more often than anything else.
The heritage is everything. You know, I'm here racing in one of the most important cars in the world, in my opinion. You know, this girl won the Tour de France in 1962, been put in a collection, gathering dust. An amazing man bought it, and he said, no, let's go and race it. That's what it was born for. It was very surreal because we hadn't prepared a car for racing for a long time. We brought it down here. Obviously, I had the best teammate in the world in Tom Christensen. We realized we didn't have an hour of brakes before we got here. So Tom said, it's a simple solution. You can't use them, and I can. So no pressure, do half an hour and try not to use them. It was a tough start because I got a good start. I got away. I knew I had to keep one eye on not using brakes and trying to preserve the car. And as all long races, you need a racing car at the end because you can still carry the speed, but without brakes you can't throw one down the inside. And so it was a little frustrating not to go and fight with the guys. The magic time in my head was 20 seconds because I felt in 30 minutes Tom could take 20 seconds with a good car. So we were down to about 14, 12, 14. I kept watching the pit board, and when I dropped a little bit more, I then put a lap in just to nick 2 or 3 seconds back. So I knew it was there, but it was just trying to make the preservation because, you know, if you don't finish, you can't win. Then watching Tom in the car was just, it was mind-blowing. You know, he did things with the car that I didn't think was really possible. You know, and watching the cameras on it close up when it was going into the dusk, and the brakes were glowing, and I was like, shit, no, this cannot make it. It cannot, because I knew what brakes we had. You know, this is just a standard road brake. And he got through, and we passed, and we won, and it was like, wow. You know, I was just, I obviously wanted it to finish a lap faster than it did because I was terrified that we weren't going to manage another lap, but Tom kept just putting the laps in and showed a masterclass in driving, and also the smile on his face afterwards. It's too difficult to explain exactly the whole ensemble of what it does for you, but you leave like a child that just found the keys of a sweet shop, and you just start grinning psychotically because the noise, the feel, everything just is right. And, you know, life doesn't get any better than that.
One of my most favourite of all cars is the fabulous short wheelbase Ferrari, and we have the 1962 Tour de France winner here in the hands of Tom Christensen. It was a mighty win. He took over the car from Joe Macari. He wasn't anywhere particularly near the front, and he just razor blade his way through the competition to an absolutely fantastic win, and that was a race that will always stand out in my mind. Tom's wonderful to watch at Goodwood. He's had so many great wins, and this was one of his finest.
It's one of the most exciting cars I've ever raced. There have been all sorts of cars I've been really lucky to jump into, Ferraris and Maseratis and so on, but this has got something very special. I just sort of began to love it, and to be able to really spend the day sideways was one of the most exciting things you could do. Back in 1998, we heard that this event was being put together, and I used to come here to watch my father back in the pre-66. And I'd come down here to drive. I'd driven the first time I'd been around a racetrack was here. So Remus had not only raced here in '48, he'd been here in the opening meeting, but it also had seen my father. So to be able to drive it here was going to be special.
Underway, a great start from Ludovic Lindsay. Now Ludovic Lindsay pulling away. Roddy McPherson making a little gap between him.
They put it in the first race, in the first revival. I happened to be on the front row of the grid, managed to get into the lead, and kept Roddy McPherson and Gregor Fiskin behind me.
Ludovic Lindsay, a towering figure in that ERA cockpit, just as his father used to be.
And managed to win. It was a fantastic moment, a highlight of my life. Well, a lot of people think these cars should be in museums, and I think some cars probably should, but very delicate ones, last one, and no one's going to be able to repeat it or even use it. But these cars are very much living creatures. They're at their best for everybody to enjoy when they're on a track. I mean, this is a living museum, if you like. The good thing about this grid, the pre-wars, they're pretty much the way they were a long time ago. There are improvements. There are materials which get better, the tyres are better and so on. But generally, they're very similar. When you're racing a car like this, it's more important in some ways to think of the imminent danger of other cars. You've got open wheels. If you're too close to the other guy and you touch wheels, you're going to go flying. So, of course, the historic importance is absolutely important. But as long as most guys here, and I think all of the guys in this grid, they're very aware of the fact that if something goes wrong, it's going to hurt. And that's a very good sort of thing to prevent people being too silly, which in turn preserves the cars, if you like. I mean, I was very lucky. In the last 16 years, David Morris, who ran this car, looked after it so beautifully. I finished every single race I entered in 16 years.
Remus is one of my favourite cars to race at Goodwood. Obviously it's in Prince Beera's colours, and Prince Beera was a great driver at Goodwood in the 50s and 60s. But Ludo was the very first winner of the very first race at the very first revival. So that was a big moment for us, and very exciting that a great friend of ours should win that race. And of course the car's been back again and again, and I think has won that race 6 times now.